Previously on A Night to Remember, Sam had a spiritual awakening which involved a lot of deep thoughts and changes in attitudes. This episode, we look at the day of the court hearing as well as everything else going on in Sam's life at that time.
I got a call from my dad saying he was going to need a pretty major heart surgery where it had to go in and, crack his chest open and do all of that. So it wasn't just their everyday surgery. It was a pretty big surgery that really scared me because it was for the first time in my life seeing my dad as someone who's not, Iron Man and invincible. It really put him into perspective that he is somehow just another human.
That's a hard pill for anybody to swallow. But for Sam, unfortunately, things get worse.
So that was hard, but then I found out that his surgery was the morning of my court hearing. So here are two hugely monumental days in my life and moments that are happening literally exactly at the same time.
Sam had a lot to be nervous about, for more than one reason.
So I had never been in any trouble before in my life, so I was scared out of my mind. Because if my charges and if this case doesn't end in my favor, then everything I've been going to school for the last 4 years is out the window. I can't teach anymore, or it'll be really hard to get a teaching job. So I was really looking forward to having my parents there to support and kind of help me get through this morning and day of my life. And then I find out that my dad's not going to be able to because not only is he not going to be there, but he's going to be having a major heart surgery that is potentially, life-threatening. I did not sleep at all. I was up in bed, just laying there, just numb.
So with all this pressure and stress all built up on one day, Sam felt he had one choice.
Driving to Wilbur. And I remember pulling up. I could tell you what stalling exactly if I was there. But I pulled up, parked my car, and I just remember saying a prayer in that moment that's, God, this sucks. And there's a lot of hurt and a lot of pain in my life right now, more than I've ever faced before. By far. And there's a lot of stuff that could potentially slide out of control really, really fast. But I'm choosing to trust in you and trust that, what comes from this day and what happens, whether my charges get dropped or I'm convicted of them, or my dad comes out of this surgery fine or not. I'm choosing to trust in you and that whatever happens is your plan. And I just remember saying that prayer and walking into the courthouse, and my dad had already been in surgery for 2 hours. I think he started at 6. I went in at 8. And his surgery was supposed to be 6.5, 7 hours. So I wasn't expecting him to be done by the time I got out of my court hearing. But I go into this court hearing at 8, and I'm one of the first people to go. And by the grace of God alone, my charges get dropped because of video evidence Doan supplied that I was unaware of. Neither my lawyer or I were, so we had to watch this video.
What was in that video was Sam's key to freedom. He mentioned earlier in episode 2, the Vietnam War riots. This is how he explains it.
From what I understood is, we have freedom protest here in the United States, and there was a law established during the Vietnam War because, there's all the war riots in the States. And there's a law established because of that police officers, when they become a cop, they give up the right to their peace. If you could disturb the peace of a law enforcement officer, from what I understood, every protester ever would have to get disturbing the peace of those law enforcement officers. So, to make things fair, and so cops don't just walk around writing disturbing the peace of me tickets all day, every day, to every protest to ever be, they made it illegal to disturb the peace of a law enforcement officer, or peace officer is the real term. So any peacekeeping employee or officer, they don't have the right to their peace. So if the cop would have written disturbing the peace of Doan student, ex-Doan student, whoever, I don't know, then I'm pretty sure I would have gotten convicted on it. But since the cop wrote disturbing the peace of Officer Mercier, that police officer that the charge was dropped because it was not an illegal offense. The cop doesn't have the right to his peace to be disturbed. I got out of there with all my charges dropped, and just I remember walking out this, it's an old courthouse, so wooden crickety floors. Walking out, walking down the stone steps out front, and just sitting on the last step of that courthouse and just praying that, just thanking God and praising him that happened, that the charge got dropped, that, in a sense, he gave me a second chance.
That's a pretty big break for Sam. But then,
while I was praying that prayer, I got a phone call from my mom, and I was really scared right then because, this was only 2.5, 3 hours after my dad had gone into surgery. And so the immediate thought I had was something went wrong and something happened, something bad. Because this is way too soon for my mom to be calling me. She said she wouldn't call me until he's out of surgery. And it was supposed to take 6.5 hours. So I was scared, and she goes, I'll never forget, she goes, he's fine, he's out, he's chatting, he's laughing. I'm like, what? And at that point, I just lost it. I broke down and was just bawling like a little baby, just completely overwhelmed by God's love and what he can do when you just trust completely in him.
To say this whole experience was life-changing for Sam, that would just be scratching the surface.
Because of that, I chose to trust God in a time when, I had no reason to, and all logic says don't trust him because look what he's done so far. Look where you're at now. Things can't get worse. They're already at the bottom. But I went against all that and said, yeah, I'm going to trust him and see what happens. And he completely overwhelmed me with his love, and my dad had an amazing recovery, and is doing fine now. You would never know he had this major surgery.
Yes, Sam had his life completely turned around by strengthening his faith, but that still doesn't explain everything. There are still some loose ends that need to be tied up, like, has he gotten closure with the people from the quad the night of his arrest? What does he think about the people that made the call to the police? Find out in the next episode of A Night to Remember.